Our first seminar is the down and dirty hands-on experience of laying track. When people dream about having a grand-scale railroad, they dream of being an engineer. Perhaps it would be better if they dreamed about being a Gandy dancer, because that's what they're going to spend a lot of their time doing. Sean Bautista gives this presentation. He and Melissa are the owners of the Hillcrest and Wautoki Railroad. Sean has laid thousands of feet of track for his own railroad, and he has laid miles of track commercially. He learned at the feet of experts and is sharing his knowledge freely.
Between your straight gauge and your curve gauge with your pre-drilled ties?
That's a good question. Let me demonstrate. There's a tool on the back of our dump truck. Can you hand me the tie gauge? Well, that's both. They're both. This is our tie drilling fixture. This is one of them. This is a drilling jig. If you look on it, it says straight on one side, and it says curve on the other. And the spacing, if you look at them, if you line the two against each other, you'll see that the curved holes are 3/8 of an inch further out than the straight holes. And so the guys will say, well, we need 250 or 300 straights. So we have two of these things. These set right on top of a tie. And they're set up so that you can, they're kind of a braille method. You stick it on the tie and it's flush with the edges. Okay. So here you can see our drill guides are here, and what we do is we have you've seen the pallets of ties out there. So we'll have a crew out there, put the shade up, get the generator, the compressor, and sometimes we'll run 4 guys at a time drilling ties, one on each side, 2 jigs going at the same time, and we got it down. We know how many seconds it takes to drill a tie. So we know that we can do 3 or 4 ties a minute for crew. And if we need 450 or 1,000 ties, we know you're looking at a man week. Okay, so just drilling them. So they have a drill each in their hands, and they drill it, take it off, kick it over, throw it on the next one, drill it, kick it over, throw it on the next one, and they just drill them on the tie piles, and then throw them onto the train cars for loading or on the trailers for wherever the construction site is at.
Ed Youngling is a prolific builder. He has worked on everything from 7.5-inch gauge to standard gauge. He is perhaps most famous as the builder of the only 1.5-inch scale Southern Pacific cab forward. But he has built and rebuilt countless other projects, including a 12-inch gauge shay that he is working on now. Let's listen as he talks about some of these projects.
The only new wheels I'm going to make for you are going to be made out of bar stock. Well, in the meantime, I had obtained some diesel locomotive axles from the Southern Pacific Railroad, some scrap axles, and they're very good steel. That they had been turned, they were too small to be used as locomotive axles anymore, so they scrapped them. So they sold me some axles, and they're 1,200 pounds, 1,500 pounds of axle. But they're extremely good steel. It's open hearth or electric steel or something like that. There's just no flaws, anything. It's beautiful stuff. Machines beautifully. So I just sliced off a bunch of slices of this and machined wheels, kind of like the one I got right there. And we sent those down to Cook Induction, and boy, they hardened up to about 60 Rockwell, which is really hard. The only problem was he didn't like them because they squealed too much. And so then I said, well, let's try something. So we made some more wheels. I just left them flat on the back so if the wheel had more mass, wouldn't be slapped a ring. Well, that helped.
For the needs of scale-sized trains, hydraulic and hydrostatic drive systems can be excellent solutions. Paul Guerin is the founder of RMI, Role Models Incorporated. He has worked professionally with fluid drive systems for decades. In this seminar, he covers the basic concepts you'll need to start designing a drive system for your engine.
The first thing we wanted to discuss is what is the purpose of the hydraulic system in the locomotive? Very simply, what we're trying to do is move energy from one place to another and apply force from one means to another. In other words, we have an engine that's creating power. We want to get that power to the truck. The easiest way, of course, probably is to throw a chain around it and chain it to an axle and make it move. Very straightforward, but pretty inflexible and pretty hard to control. You can also go ahead, you can use the power of the engine to generate electricity and then deal with electric motors, electric controls, etc., like they do in a lot of full prototypes. But for our size and scale and everything, one of the easiest ways to do it is to use hydraulics. In other words, we're taking a tube full of oil, we're putting a certain amount of force at one end, we see that same force coming out at the other end, and we apply that force to something.
There's not a man alive who has worked on more Cagneys than Don Micheletti. He owns 2 himself, and he does the maintenance on several others. For many years, Don was also the Chief Mechanical Officer for the Standard Gauge Pacific SP-2472. After the challenges of dealing with the FRA and Class 1 railroads, he enjoyed the simplicity of working on these wonderful toys.
One of the things that I found fun is these little engines, even though they're really tiny, are very robustly built. They really just go and go and go and go, because if you really think about it, at the turn of the 1900s, there wasn't a lot of machinery around. Cars, automobiles were not common. There were steam tractors and things like that, but that was about it, and not many people worked on those. So these things had to be able to be run and maintained by people that weren't particularly knowledgeable. All they really knew how to do probably was lubricate and kind of tweak. I guess the good news back then is that people who did know steam were around and available to help them when the need was there. The boilers on the Cagneys really were kind of interesting. They really are nothing but a kettle. There's nothing inside them. Everything, all the valves, everything that might normally be inside a boiler, like a throttle and dry pipe and things like that, are all on the outside in a Cagney.
We would like to introduce Mike Diebel. Mike is himself a rail fan, and he is an expert on insuring railroads. Since this presentation, Mike has retired, but his firm is still in business, and some of the special information has become obsolete, but the concepts and principles are still worth considering. Here's Mike.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about 15-inch and 7.5 and the gauges that you folks are interested in. It can either be real complex or it can be real easy. Ellen here has a real complex operation. Okay? I don't know anything about her situation, but I would suspect that she needs high limits of liability. A lot of folks, if I can give them $1 million coverage, that's all they need, and that's happy. I can do that real easily. I've got a standard policy. It's a group policy that's endorsed by the National Railway Historical Society. Any of you members of NRHS? Yeah, we got a few. Well, they endorse this policy, so it's group purchasing, but it's also cookie cutter. So if your cookie doesn't look like theirs, then maybe that program doesn't work for you. But as an example, if you have a commercial operation, say you're operating in a park or any kind of a setting, I don't care if it's in your backyard or your own acreage, you get out with a hammer and you put a sign out and you say train rides 75 cents or whatever, I can sell you $1 million policy for less than $2,000, okay? So that's what I mean, that's real simple. And somebody asked me the other day, well, suppose I just need coverage for 5 days during the Christmas season when I do Christmas tree sales. No, I can't sell you a short-term policy. You have to buy an annual policy. And some folks make out like bandits because they've got a complex, bigger railroad situation. Somebody else with just 500 feet of track or something, they're going to pay the same price, and proportionally they're going to pay a lot more. But it's kind of a cookie cutter deal. It's a slot rated thing. So it's helped a lot. A lot of folks have really benefited from that. Wabash and Frisco, I think you guys are on that program. And Carl Hovenitz, a lot of my clients are here, but that program really works well for a lot of people.